continent. I mean, isn't there a little bit of a racist thing there that they have to be European white Christians who have the value? Of course, there's that old joke: the Puritans loved religious freedom so much that they kept it all to themselves. And they did. They fought, they excluded, they banished, they persecuted, they wouldn't let people vote who didn't believe in the Trinity, and so on. All these colonies back then were little tiny mini theocracies, and our founders, more than a century later, had the wisdom to say, we're tired of that. We don't want this divisiveness and this fighting. We're going to have the first country in history, the first constitution in history to officially separate state and church. We were the first to do it. It was an experiment. They were very science-minded back then, and they were doing this experiment. Let's see what happens. It's never been done before. To have a country that's not based on some authority up above. Before that time, all governments were run by some sovereign monarch, a king, a lord, a church, an establishment, and the authority came from above to the people. But our government turned it totally upside down. The first time in history, we start with we the people. The consent of the governed. That never was done before, and there is no authority. Our founders hated the idea of an absolute authority over we the people, be it a king or a church or whatever. So they wrote the first constitution in history that completely separates state and church. It's a godless document, no mention of God or Jesus. And the Bill of Rights is, you know, the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights, the first phrase, is sometimes called the freedoms of conscience. There's 5 freedoms in the bill in the First Amendment: freedom of religion, speech, press, assembly, and to petition the government. Those 5 freedoms are loosely called freedom of conscience. The government doesn't interfere with our private conscience to believe or not believe. But before any of those 5 freedoms are spelled out, guess what happens first? A non-freedom. The very first words of the very First Amendment is a non-freedom, not to the people, but to the government, telling the government, hey, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Then it goes on to tell us to enumerate our freedoms. It doesn't grant our freedoms, it just recognizes them. We have these freedoms as human beings. So that establishment clause, there's 2 parts to religion in the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So there's the establishment clause, the free exercise clause, and they're like different sides of the same coin, right? So that establishment clause is the bread and butter of our organization. We win our lawsuits based on that establishment clause, when the government does anything respecting an establishment of religion. And by the way, some people in the religious right think they have this great argument by pointing out that it says Congress, right? It says Congress. States can do what they want, can't they? Can't mayors and city, county executives? No, they can't. That has been expanded, and the 14th Amendment, especially the due process, has applied all of the Bill of Rights to all of the states. So you can't have one state violating the Constitution. There are some things in our Constitution that are hardwired there that no majority can vote away. Some majorities wanted to vote away. They had segregation in the South. We had to bring in federal troops to say, look, you don't have the majority rule here to overrule the Constitution. No local school board can vote to say we're going to have prayer in our schools, or we're going to put the 10 Commandments in our schools. By the way, in Virginia, in Giles County, they did vote to put the 10 Commandments in their public schools. And guess who's going to sue over that? That's a no-brainer. That's already been decided. They are renegades. They're rebelling against established law. They're breaking the law, sending a bad message to the students that whether you like it or not, we should follow the law in this country. And they're thumbing their nose at the Constitution. So we're waiting for a decision. Depends on Mannion and Easterbrook. Williams is great on those 3 judges. If we lose, we will appeal to the entire 15-judge panel, which you can do. And if we win, of course, we're going to stop. We don't want to go to the Supreme Court. When you're winning, you don't want to go higher. You want to stop. If we do win in Chicago, if Judge Crabb's decision is upheld, as it should be, because it's a great decision, then what are the chances that Obama will appeal that? Some people speculate, and I'm not going to try to second-guess Obama on this. Some people speculate Obama values religious freedom, and as a constitutional authority, he knows that it's wrong for the government to be promoting religion, but he would rather have it look like he was forced to stop. rather than him coming up and saying, yeah, I agree we shouldn't have prayer. It's probably a political thing that's happening, that if the courts force it, then it's going to be forced. Right now, it's unconstitutional. Right now, it's illegal. Right now, what Obama did last May, and what he's going to do again this next May, is against the law, according to a federal judge. Of course, it could be appealed, and we could lose. And what are our chances at the Supreme Court? Probably not good with the current Supreme Court. If they do rule against us, it would be very interesting to see how, to see why, in light of the precedent, in light of our history, in light of the errors, in light of the fact that this bill was passed clearly with religious intent, and a secular government is not supposed to have a religious intent. It would be very interesting to see what these justices might use as an argument to justify a secular government promoting religion. So watch it and don't pray. Watch it and it'll be in the news sometime when that decision comes down. The Freedom from Religion Foundation has 16,000 members. We're growing fast. We're the largest group of atheists and agnostics in the nation. We publish a newspaper, Free Thought Today. We have a weekly radio show called Free Thought Radio. This week we interviewed the actor Madison Arnold, which is a really fun show. You've seen him in a bunch of movies, Escape from Alcatraz and Presumed Innocent with Harrison Ford. He was in Donnie Brasco. He was a bunch of movies, and TV and on the stage. And he's been a member of our group since 1980, and he talks about his life as a freethinker and as an actor. And we couldn't get him to reveal any more names. We wanted him to tell us, you know. But anyway, it's a fun show. We just did about 250 shows. We're almost up to 5 years now. And you can stream it or you can subscribe to the podcast to hear Free Thought Radio. Okay, I'm going to stop there, Trevor. Are we done or do you want to do questions?
We got time for some questions. If
you do? Okay. Great. There's someone in the middle back there? Okay.
Just a couple questions. Hi, I'm Kelsey. As an educator, I was reading up on you before I came today, and I noticed that you published some free thought-centered children's books. What has been your experience with educators using those with kids in schools? If educators have used those, have people said, hey, don't teach my kids to think or anything like that? Anyway, what sort of response have those books been met with in schools?
So you're going to be a teacher then?
Yeah.
Oh. I think that's the highest calling in this country, what you're doing. And it's so undervalued, you know. We should
Underpaid is what.
Underpaid. Really, being a teacher in the schools is one of the highest, most wonderful things anybody could choose to do. But I don't know, I don't have any experience of any of my books being used in public schools. Mostly it's parents who buy them for children. Although there was a library in a California city who refused to stock one of my books because some freethinkers suggested, here, put this book in the library, and they refused to, and they didn't say why. They just said, oh, it's not a very good book. And how can you complain? You can't force a library to carry books, but there might have been some censorship in there. But I hear from families who, you know, they're aimed at kids like 8 to 10 to 12 years old. One's on the scientific method, one's on morality. How do you decide what's right and wrong? And one of them is a real hard-hitting free thought book on, you know, comparing God and Santa Claus. And, I have some atheist parents who say, I don't know if I want to show that to my kids yet because they still believe in Santa. So maybe they should wait on that. But so I don't have anything to say about my books. Yeah, up here, okay.
We hear that like 2/3 of the country say America's going in the wrong direction, and I agree with the Tea Party that Washington doesn't listen to us, and I think it's kind of critical we first define what direction the country's going and what direction we want it to go, and we need to be sure we know who does Washington listen to. And I think if you answer all those questions correctly, it's the great disparity of wealth between the rich and the poor that have people have this great dissatisfaction here. I'm kind of curious if we had maybe a return to the 50s where people lived an easy middle-class life, They felt secure in their jobs. Would we be having this interest in conservative religions and having the same breath guns?
I was raised in the 50s too, and I was lucky. I had a fun childhood. But the 50s there were a lot of parts of the 50s that weren't that great.
Well, just say in general, if people in the country now were more generally prosperous and secure in their lives and their sustenance, do you think we would have this emphasis on, say, radical religion? No,
and the studies all show that. Did you hear his question? All the studies show the better off the country is, the less religion it has. Look at Northern Europe. Look at Europe. Look at how, by any measure, the Danes and the Norwegians and the Swedes have the best societies in the world. Infant mortality, happiness, equality, contentment with their jobs, you name it, their healthcare system and all that. Their life is wonderful there, and their religion is almost nothing. By contrast, there's a few outliers, but by contrast, the countries that are struggling the worst, where there's a huge disparity, where there's huge problems, have more religion. And it might be because, Phil Zuckerman and others have hypothesized that when things are going bad, you want to reach out and win the cosmic lottery. You want to be saved from the misery that you're in. But when things are going well, you don't need that. So ironically, religions like right-wing believers have an investment of keeping things messed up. You don't want things going well. If things are going well, then people don't need to cry out to God. In fact, a lot of sermons you hear, things are bad, things are horrible. You can only sell something to someone if they have a need for it, right? But how much respect should we have for a doctor who runs around cutting people with a knife in order to sell them a Band-Aid, right? That's kind of what Christianity is. You're bad, you're going to go to hell, things are horrible, you have this, and you need to be saved, right? Which is a real put down. So look what's happened in Europe, and look what's happening in this country through just an organic relaxing of religion and an increased lifestyle, and when people are better off. I think you're absolutely right. There's less need to try to reach outside of the natural world when things are going a lot better. So maybe instead of getting up and preaching atheism, we should be preaching economic equality. We should be preaching universal health care. We should be preaching equal rights for women and civil rights. And especially we should be preaching education and science in the schools. And let people believe or not believe. You can be a strong atheist without even using the word atheist, by pushing strong human values over supernatural values, I think. Okay, how about here with the...
I was just wondering, I know for the most part, what our response would be, but what do you think the public response would be if the Supreme Court did vote in favor of the National Day of Prayer, despite all of the evidence?
Yeah, did you hear the question? What would the public's response be? Well, the religious right would celebrate. They would see it as a vindication that their prayers were answered. They would put a lot of confidence and praise in the wisdom of the Supreme Court, although they weren't so confident back with Roe versus Wade, right? You tend to celebrate when the court agrees with you. When we had a case in 2007 where we thought we were winning, we thought it was 5-4 in our favor. But Sandra Day O'Connor left, and she was replaced by Alito. So then there was no swing vote. In fact, on the radio show, we played the song. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. And Alito then went the other way, so it was 5-4 against us. But 4 justices of the United States Supreme Court agreed with us. That was just a split decision, and wrote a wonderful dissent saying that the majority had no reason for what it was. They use some excuse. And there's something about religion that can fog up people's judgment. It's very, very difficult to be deeply religious and vote against your religion. You can do it. Justice Judge Jones in the Dover case in Pennsylvania is a church-going conservative Christian appointed by a Republican, and yet he voted against intelligent design in the public schools because, rationally, intelligent design is not science. So he voted the right way against his own private religious views. So that's what we need in the court, is real objectivity. But if we lose, nothing will change. It'll just validate. They'll have big celebrations, they'll have more big meetings, and they'll say, yeah, we can do what we want. And that won't stop us from complaining and filing other lawsuits on other issues. But we want to test it. And if we win, there's also the possibility